So we have about 30 minutes for this panel session, and what I'd like to propose is that I have one question for each of our speakers based on your presentation, and then I'd like to open it up for general discussion. I'd like to begin by complimenting you on outstanding presentations. You really made the case for the ethical imperative of the work that's being done. The title of our session is Sustainable Models of Health Institutions. And so I'd like to ask a few questions that relate to that sustainability. Dr. Oak, you talked about the attrition of human resources, that people leaving the institution, and that really is a threat to sustainability. And you also talked about accountability as being a primary issue. Who is accountable within a health institution for maintaining those human resources, and how do we measure if they, in fact, as a leader, are doing their job to keep people? Is that something that we can expect of our leadership?
Well, one thing could be this attrition issues mostly come in cases of nurses and doctors. So when somebody enters your organization, when you upscale his training, you could evoke a bond or a fixed amount of service contract with that particular employee. That's a traditionally followed out model. But I would consider this as a negative approach. The best approach is for the administrator is to raise the institute to such standards that nobody would love to leave. And that's the fact of life.
Bravo. Dr. Ajay Kumar, in describing Healthcare Global, you made this very excellent case that accessibility and affordability are these two interrelated issues, and then talked about the hub and spoke model that you made. How do we measure affordability? How do we decide when something is affordable and when it is not, so that we can make these very difficult decisions to maintain our sustainability of the programs?
The affordability in a cancer care is purely should be based on what am I getting out of it? What is the cost versus benefit? I also call it the cost of low cost we have to be aware of. When we always talk about low cost, what is the cost of low cost in terms of recurrence and the trauma to the patient's travel and the cost, all that. So I like to talk about affordability should be measured with the outcome of the patients. If the patient first time is eligible to have a good outcome, whatever irrespective of the stage, and we can convert this disease to chronic, I think that is money well spent, provided we have a system to do that. Can we do that by opening the doors like we do in HCG, off hours for patients to take radiation high end? Can we do that by cost subsidy with free drugs? It can be done. So it is like we talk about cancer care, personalized cancer care. The financial also should be personalized to that individual based on that capability, and not deny the quality cancer care because of the economic status. And in a private enterprise, what HCG has shown clearly, it can be done. And we have proved showing clearly across the country it can be done. And that itself can have a major social impact, not only on the patient, but also on the family. We have to go back to the families and do that, which we are doing in Ranchi or Cuttack, understanding their economics based on the fact they are not traveling, they are getting the high quality treatment there. What is the impact of the family? So this is a study in progress, clearly showing the great benefit this can have on the society.
So at the end of your presentation, you had a moving video about the gentleman and maintaining his voice. Is that competitive, the ethical and moral issue? How do you compare that with financial affordability and sustainability? Where does that fit?
I think the issue is, as I mentioned, India is the cheapest healthcare provider. While we talk about high cost in the other countries, even Africa, how can I do this device for 50 rupees and give it to the patient, which makes a huge impact? How can I do a CAT scan for $40, MRI for $100 in private enterprise? And this is the model which we are proud of in India as doctors. not just, we are very proud that we have been able to bring down the cost to the society significantly. Same technology, same thing which a Western powers practicing in US for 25 years. I can say that clearly what I'm amazed is how in India we have innovated this low cost. Purchasing power is not my problem. Purchasing power has to be done by the people in the administration. But as doctors, we have brought down the cost so low, drug costs. World is marveling at what we are doing. They're trying to study our model. And we are proud to take this model further and bridge the gap between the have and the have-not so-called. And India itself, by the way, has 250 million affording class, which is equal to US and entire Europe. So there is a gap we can bridge by cross-subsidy.
So you're arguing that innovation is a tool that can help us get there. Dr. Badwe, you presented to us the statistics of Tata Memorial, which are truly staggering. 67,000 new patients per year that is a global achievement. I am curious, if a benefactor were to come to you and to say for your hospital, you're going to get 20% of your annual budget as an extra gift, where would you invest it in your system, and would it be different if that was a one-time gift versus an ongoing gift that you could count on year by year?
I would love to have any percent, 20%, but presently I'm fortunate that the government is even giving 200% to us for recreating ourselves at multiple places. So there are two things that are vitally important. One is creating multiple spokes in various parts so that the present cost of creating such a thing is somewhere close to about 25-30 crores, and that much of benefit. If there is a benefactor who wants to give something, I would use 80% of that to create that infrastructure and 20% as the OPEX for that utility.
I see. And so you really, you would be looking at how to get your care to more people would you might bring in a new therapy, or would that really be only if it improved your affordability, your sustainability and that big coverage? How do you see that?
I don't think I'm looking at getting newer infrastructure in the present location. I'm looking at getting newer facilities far away from us so that the number of patients don't increase from 67,000 and above, but in year, 2 years, 3 years, I'm looking at 50,000 as a reduction over a period of time.
Thank you. Dr. Shandy, you talked to us about the Christian Medical College Vellore model and really made an outstanding argument for how that is that it's going to work. What I wasn't clear on was how much of this model is based upon, is a Christian model with the imperatives that go along with that? And does that mean that charity, that from Christian charity is a component of this? If so, how much? How much do we need to have to make that model sustainable?
Yes, it is true that the driving passion to do charity and to run it the way we have comes out of the faith base. This is our mission, and therefore it has very high priority, the charity aspect. And that's why even interns are given the privilege of wanting to write off an investigation. Of course, it's audited and they have to be responsible. There's a system of checking that they are not misusing it. But they begin to learn who deserves to have charity and who does not. So as I mentioned, CMC's model is a low margin, high volume. And we are blessed by the fact that we have 8,000 outpatients, and we can sustain this whole difficult model by the high volume but low margin concept that has been invoked. How long this will last is difficult to predict. We just hope and pray that we'll be able to do it. But that's the way it has been running for 117 years.
Thank you. It's really awesome. Dr. Namparamallasamy, you talked to us about the eye care and this incredible work that you've done. You've talked about growth within budget, innovation, and quality control as being part of the secret of what you have been doing. Tremendous success in this model. How much is this possible because eye care is a specific somewhat uniform set of diseases. Does this model actually apply, do you think, to other diseases that are more varied, there's more variables fitting into how to do this? Could you, for example, do a primary care model this way, or is it really, this is a specialization model, and that's the way we should be thinking about it?
This is often asked question whether it can be replicated for the other specialties also. Even in the same eye care, the cataract is the main thing which we have been doing it, but there are other conditions which are not being utilized, other resources like how many of you know that diabetes affects the eye? So we have to educate and that. But there are conditions where there's dental care, where the oral hygiene itself is not emphasized in the rural areas or urban areas and other things. So this kind of a model is applicable for that kind of, or even for hard of hearing. That hard of hearing, there are so many varieties of conditions which can be preventable, which can be curable, and that can be by education and awareness creation and outreach model and that kind of. And also there are some conditions where even cardiology, there is being the consultations and other things being done for but still it is yet to develop, except what we want is we want to have the dedicated service delivery personnel, not only to create awareness, but they must be willing to give good service delivery for these people. So these are the few areas we could think of to spread replicate.
That's really a fascinating response. So you're thinking about your specialty, but within this much broader health framework, and that's undoubtedly part of the reason of your success. Dr. Gupta, you, sir, are a senior health administrator with the government and therefore have this primary responsibility in the setting of public health. I'm wondering if you could comment on how you see the public health care system. What can you learn from these different models that we've heard about today, some of which are more publicly based, some are charity based, some are private? What comments and learning points do you have for us?
Public health is having a big challenge nowadays. So far, public health, everybody thought, is about communicable diseases. Then we added reproductive and child health to that. But emerging challenges of non-communicable disease was never thought to be part of larger public health system. When I say larger public health system, it means the outreach program, which was envisaged under public health, never had these components. As population is aging and new lifestyle changes are being added, we realize diabetes, cancer, and similar such challenges are posing a serious threat. So one of the major challenge before was, can we mainstream this non-communicable disease portfolio to our public health? And this is the challenge we took up in Gujarat, wherein we institutionalized the diabetes care, the cancer care in our public health system. Initially it was thought to be not a part of the public health. I'll just give an example. Cancer care, two of the experts, spoke about cancer care. And they all talked about how in a tertiary care we can treat, how easily we can do, how effectively we can do, but the major challenge lies at the earliest, at the beginning. Can we identify? Can we reach out to the people and communicate with them at the earliest stage? We took up this challenge for breast and cervical cancer. Can in a breast cancer, when we set up, a committee and discussed with experts, everybody talked of create facilities. And the bigger challenge was, can in breast cancer we go out and talk to the community, talk to the women and advise them how to do self-examination? If they report some kind of malignancy, can we take them to first level of care? And still if the problem persists, can we take them to the next care? I'll just quote the few numbers. In last 2 years, we screened, when I say screened, community screening, whereas a public health worker went to that woman, we screened 12 million women. 12 million. That is more than population of many of the countries we talked about in the morning. Now reaching out to these women, I had a workforce of 40,000 ASHA, which is an incentive-based health worker, and about 10,000 female health workers. When we went through this, we realized about 100,000 suspect cases were reported that yes, they might have some problem. When we went to first level of medical examination by a medical doctor, these cases dropped down to about 10,000. We got them tested at higher level facilities, and I'm happy to say that about 2,000 women were treated at the highest level of the care that we could provide. The point I'm trying to emphasize is, this is again a big pyramid. If you don't reach out to the community, don't go to the people and tell them how best you can do at the earliest stage, preventive health care and diagnosing at the earliest remains one of the major challenges. So integrating new challenges in the public health, reaching out to the community and making it sustainable, I think is the major challenge before us. And when we talk about a country like India, different, I just spoke about one. Just to give an example, diabetes, we know that Gujarat is called diabetes capital of India, and everybody thought it is urban areas which will have diabetes. We realized there is high incidence of diabetes even in rural area, because we could open more than 10,000 primary diabetes detection centers. So it is these kind of institutionalization which we need to look for.
So that takes me to my last question. Dr. Supe, you are the dean of a leading medical school here in Mumbai. The role of medical education in what we've heard about today, I know in my medical school, they taught us very little about healthcare systems and even less about healthcare economics. And so I'm curious, how do you see all of this impacting on the medical curriculum of your medical students? And should that be something that's evolving and changing?
Thank you. I think ours is a little different problem. Corporation is, Municipal Corporation of Mumbai has a huge health infrastructure. We have about 4 medical colleges with major hospitals. We have 16 secondary hospitals. We have 28 to 30 maternity homes. We have 175 dispensaries and 163 kind of health posts. So it's about 399 locations. And we have MCGM has a fairly good resources, and it has worth about 3,600 crore in the health budget. And the revenue is only about 300 because we give treatment free to most of the patients. And we treat about, Mumbai has about 60% people who are roughly around 50 to 60% stay in slums. And most of them are not able to afford health care into the various elite and the other centers. So we provide health care to them. And I'm sure Dr. Oak talked about it, how we try to take this through our medical education into the health camps and all. The major issue is that this whole system of medical colleges is based on the residents, and the hospitals are run by residents with few faculty. And the whole thing is through education, we try to give these healthcare services. Now, through this now, we are taking for last 5 or 7 years or more than that, the whole healthcare, we make our students go into these communities and we make them realize what is affordable healthcare cost. And we are changing the curriculum towards the public-oriented curriculum. Of course, it is still not a very community-based curriculum like probably what CMC Vellore really does. But our students definitely have an idea about how the healthcare cost is there and how we can cut down onto the cost. So ours is a comparatively free medical service. However, when you think about the scalability and affordability and the growth, we are growing in numbers, no doubt about that. If to give an example of my own college, we see about, say, 20 lakh, that is about 2 million patients every year, out of which almost about half are new patients. And we have about 80 to 85,000 admissions and equal number of operations. We have 43 super specialties. And we have a huge infrastructure which really runs. And if you really look at the cost of our, like we have a super specialty operation which is done less than, say, about $100, and many of our patients even don't pay that. Our specialty operation exactly is done for about $10, and many of patients will not pay for that. So the cost of healthcare in these places is too low. Now what are we looking ahead? I'm sure we have Tata Memorial Center where we work in harmony for cancer treatment, but I think the Tata model has a lot of good things, though, I mean, if you look at the sustainability, the newer hospitals we are trying to bring into these suburbs now, because what has happened in Mumbai, the population has shifted from main city to the suburbs. 75% population stays in suburbs, and the colleges are in the city. So now we have to expand and go there. So when we are going there, we are trying to take Tata model, where we'll have in-house practice kind of a section, and then we'll try to see how we can match affordability in the next coming years. So it's a balance between that. And I think it's, I mean, currently in Mumbai, only 15% or 20% people are able to go to a private or a nursing home today. 60% of people will go to the public hospitals. And if they are going to the public hospitals, I think public hospitals need to stay, they need to scale into their growth. At the same time, we have to really see how they become affordable by adopting few other kind of models from what has been told today.
Thank you very much. With that, I'd like to open up to the audience. Any questions? There's a hand back there, and back there, and I'll need a little help in deciding where we go next.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to ask a question to the entire panel, actually, because we have an equal representation from both. We have an equal representation from quaternary single specialty institutes like Tata, HCG, as well as Aravind Eye Care model. And we have a representation from the multi-specialty quaternary care institutes as well. So moving forward, if we are really looking at expanding in terms of scalability, growth, and affordability, which model would we actually recommend? Can both coexist? Because one gives the outreach of a primary to quaternary under one roof, so the patient doesn't really have to move from one place to another, while the other gives you an opportunity to innovate more and more because you are focused on a particular area of care, and that provides you with economies of scale. So if you are really going to look at a decision of going in further in terms of scalability, growth, and affordability, which model would be recommended? Thank you.
Do we need to pick a model? Are they in different environments? How is that decided, or is it more organic? Thoughts?
I think that's a good question. And if you really look at the various institutes which have gone across the world, and even in India, look at the AIIMS Delhi, how it is going. It has equal number of, I think what they are trying to develop is a separate specialty or super specialty institutes amongst the institutes. It's like a separate center of gastroenterology, which will have, say, 72 specialists, and it will have its own building, and it works within the framework of the AIIMS, but it still has its own existence. Like, say, fortunately, you will have, every specialty will have its own kind of an institute, eye institute, cardiovascular institute, within that particular multi-specialty kind of a place. So it will have its own existence, its own education and research, but it will still have, patients will be able to go in the same area. I think those kind of models would probably work. And the second point is about affordability. I think we have to adopt that over a period of time, the corporations or state are not going to really afford the whole cost free. There is not going to be a free lunch. So we have to have a co-payment and that kind of a cost coming. In India, what happened was we reduced the tax to GDP ratio to 10% from 94 liberalization. But what we did, we made education and health privatize. And we took it from the public sector to the private sector. Now today what has happened, that 60% of the people are not able to pay for that private cost. So the government has to strengthen that education and health. So there has to be a mixed model in India rather than any one model which would really prevail.
Thank you very much. The lady here in the audience on this side, the right side.
Hi, my question actually is to our government counterparts. I think what we have over here is a very clear example of how we've been able to show successful models balancing affordability but also availability of standard of care. And if Dr. Badwe and HCG colleague indicates a missing link over here would be, to do it in a way that people keep coming back and we become centers of excellence. Now, scaling this, what we've been hearing about public-private partnerships, we've been hearing about, new ways of working, really to bring it down to specifics. So where do you see scalability coming? Because in the end, it's all about one institute leading a pioneering practice. In the end, it's about one institute leading an eye care practice. So the real question here is about scalability. Are you looking at genuine public-private partnerships? Are you looking at, market-based incentives? Are you looking at something that will make this relevant for more private sector participation, more public health institutions coming in? So just your thoughts on that.
See, I'll take from where Dr. Supe left. See, I'll just give example of, he was giving example of AIIMS, of BJ Medical College in Ahmedabad. 3 departments of that college, oncology, the cardiology, and the kidney care. All 3 of them were converted into a super specialty center of excellence within that campus, and now 3 of them house about 600 to 700 bedded hospital in themselves. Now, question is, can we replicate that further and take it to other places? Yes. It takes time. If you want to replicate the same model at different places, like say this model took 20-25 years to come to that stage. Like EMC took about 70-80 years to come to this stage. We don't have that kind of time and patience right now to develop or let the institutes allow that kind of leverage to take that much of time. So what we need to do is establish good PPP practices. And here, Dr. Bidwe, for the sake of time, probably was not elaborating on that, but let me put some elaboration to that. Like say, take cancer care. Now, maybe surgeries can be done at one place on. But once a particular care has been identified, can that care, the therapy can be given at 5 different places? Yes, that's possible. And that can be done within government, seeking private help. So we need to develop a good leverage between public health institutions and private institutions. The pricing models will vary. The pricing models, there are different models worked out within institutions. There can be other schemes, social security schemes, like just to give an example, we have got a scheme called Ma in Gujarat, where we'll provide tertiary care facilities to all the patients under BPL and low income group capacity. We have got all cancer care hospitals in Gujarat linked to that, including SG, HCG, and our own hospital. So now people come and diagnose at one particular facility for treatment, for follow-up, for therapy. They can go to the nearest of their facility. That increases both availability as well as the nearness of the care.
Thank you. We're approaching the end. Dr. Kotelnik, you have a question, sir.
Yes. I think that these presentations were very striking and motivational, I think. My question is, you presented several examples of models that are able to produce quality care at much lower cost than what we find in most countries. The question that I have is, how do you do that? You must be saving a lot of money. I know that the cost of wages in India is lower. You are able to produce certain inputs in the country while other developing countries can have to import it. I would like you to elaborate a little bit on where are the main sources of savings in your models.
So, gentlemen, what's your secret?
I think in the private enterprise I can talk. Clearly, it is the model how you do capacity utilization and make sure that with the centralization of services, no duplication of services, and how the expertise is used in the proper way using technology, as well as, when the Harvard Business Schools did a study on this, that's exactly what they were amazed, how you can do this at such a low cost. I think it is clearly the consumer is the king in India. Because one of the things which came out of this Harvard Business School study is only 65% actually in India are cash paying patients. So consumer demands high quality at a low cost. Insurance companies are not involved, middlemen are not involved. Government schemes, of course, pay much lower. But this model and the competition which exists in India is tremendous. 70+% is produced by private healthcare. So this is what has created this model over the years, and more quality we strive for. So this is what has been done. I actually have gone to Colombia and other places to give workshop on that, how this model can be effective globally.
So Dr. Chandy, Dr. Badwe, and then we'll close.
I want to respond to that question from our institution's point of view. I think most would agree that optimal health care can be delivered at 60% of the current private healthcare costs. There's no doubt about that. If we make a pledge towards doing what is needed for the patient, patients go shopping because they are confused. Because there's a scan that's advertised, there's another scan that links onto it. For example, we've had several patients who came with right-sided pain and they had an ultrasound and found a harmless stone sitting in the gallbladder. And the surgeon immediately said, do it tonight. And then the scan extended downwards and found that there was something else. This is not the way to practice healthcare. This is treating the investigation. So if we do what is really needed in a general outpatient clinic in any hospital, people come with common ailments. It might be a 2-day viral fever or a 3-day fever which can be tackled without any investigations. So medicine is an eminently clinical, hand-based, touch-based discipline. Today, it has become investigational because there's money in it. So that's the approach we take. We question our interns as to why a certain investigation was ordered on rounds. So we have to take that approach that do what is needed for the patient for what he has come for, and don't cast the net far and wide to fish for harmless diseases. Somebody said jokingly, after the age of 50, you can take out 5 organs: the tonsil, the appendix, the prostate, the uterus, the breast. Is that medicine? It's not. So that's the approach that we need to take if we really want to cater to the large masses of this nation. One, I wanted to respond to that lady who asked the question. It is necessary for healthcare to move in a very robust way into the villages. If we are looking at Indian healthcare, it's far too concentrated in metros. And every village must have a hub of excellence. One. Second is, India needs at least 10 times more general practitioners than specialists. The tragedy is that everybody wants to see a specialist. If you have a headache, you want to see a neurologist. You don't need them. If you have a chest pain, you want to see a cardiologist. And most often, you'll land up with 3 stents because there are harmless blocks sitting inside. So we need general practitioners of quality, not the type we have. And the healthcare system, the government and the states and the colleges must make a recommitment to training general practitioners like the NHS did many years ago in the UK. If we do that for 10 years, the scenario will change.
Dr. Badwe, maybe we have your closing comments.
I echo Dr. Chandy's opinion. The treatment is without frills. The second most important, the whole evidence-based guidelines have a matrix of what's minimum required for treatment, what's optimum, and what's optional. So nothing of the optional ever comes into our prescription. That reduces the cost remarkably. And the third most important aspect is the numbers. We have some peripheral centers. As I mentioned, the commonest cancers there would be treated there by creating infrastructure because the numbers are adequate there. Anything that is less than that would be used as a referral guideline to a larger center. And we do have facilities by which we can have patients transported free of charge, brought to a central place. We have NGOs that support their stay and all aspects of complementary spending that happens for a central place, and the treatment remains with larger numbers of uncommon disease also. So it's all in numbers. Thank you.
So with that, it's our lunch is now.
Can I just add one more
Oh,
thing?
sorry, one last comment.
I entirely agree with you, and the root cause of all this, whatever said and done, is because the wages and salaries given to healthcare professionals in India are far low than what they are given worldwide. That's the bottom line. And I would like to upscale that. The second reason is the cost of technology. When I buy a CT scanner and MRI scanner in India, the same company, I buy it at least 1/3 the cost that what the Europe is getting.
Thank you very much.